It's an absolute pleasure to welcome someone I've known for quite a number of years now and who I class as a good friend as well as a colleague in the industry, and someone who is a very active member of the ITT Education and Training Committee and a great supporter of ITT Future You. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Matthew Gardiner today. Matthew, great to see you.
Great to see you, Claire. Pleasure to join you.
Yes, well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Now, Matthew is currently the head of marketing and external communications for IAG Cargo, which obviously is a huge role, particularly over the sort of the challenges, I would imagine, of the last 12 months. And I have no doubt we will cover some of that off as we speak today. But Matthew, I want to start off with just asking you, perhaps you could give us a brief sort of story behind your journey into travel and your career journey so far and how you actually got to where you are today. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, certainly, Claire. I guess I was very fortunate that as a child, I got to travel a lot with my parents. Then I studied at Nanyang Tech University in Singapore, and the learning, the adventure, the expanded perspectives that come from jumping on a plane. I fell in love with travel at a young age, and it was a sector that I very much wanted to be part of. When I completed my bachelor's degree, I started working for a luxury tour operator as a product and marketing exec. I was very fortunate, actually, that in that first job, I got to work with Philippa Harris, who at the time was a ITT board director. And she was a great mentor to have in a first role. From there, I progressed my career with roles in a variety of travel businesses, from startups to a large multinational hotel chain, before I joined IAG Cargo, which is the cargo division of International Airlines Group. International Airlines Group being the business that owns British Airways, Iberia, Aer Lingus, Vueling and LEVEL. I joined IAG Cargo on a contract to help transform the business into an e-commerce company to deliver digital sort of channel shift. Then I worked in marketing acquisition before being promoted into my current role as head of marketing and external communications.
So, I mean, that's a great story in itself, isn't it? The fact is that you kind of took almost a calculated risk by taking a contract, a fixed term contract with the business. And of course, that has led to, a much longer and better career. And obviously it's great promotion for you. And obviously, I mean, as you just said, IAG is a vast company, probably one of the biggest travel companies in the world. But I guess some people would say that your role isn't necessarily directly travel related. And how would you answer that in terms of, I guess, for the audience, that here today?
Yeah, I mean, to pick up on your first point about it being a calculated risk to take a contract, it's, for anyone who's watching this who is job searching at the moment, a contract can be a great way to get into a company. I know that a lot, when you're advertising an interim role, you do get less applications. So, you're up against less competition. And again, from my experience, a lot of interim roles do turn permanent. So if for anyone listening who's job hunting, that's something, do not shy away from interim roles. On your second point about, us being one of the largest travel businesses out there, but actually me not working directly in a travel related role, absolutely. I mean, IAG is a hybrid business. Our passenger businesses manage, everything above the wing, and at IAG Cargo we ensure the bellies of the planes are full. When I did that contract, I quickly became fascinated in cargo and logistics and the important role that air freight plays in moving essential supplies, powering world trade, and delivering everything from life-saving drugs, the COVID-19 vaccines being a great example of that, to roses for Valentine's Day just gone. Then last year we also carried over 20,000 tons of PPE.
Wow. I think people often forget there's that huge side of travel. And I do think that you know, it is very much part of the wider travel industry without question. So, you know, obviously you've done a variety of different roles throughout your career, but all with a kind of a marketing focus. So what is it that you particularly love about marketing? And I guess for people who are interested in marketing, what are particular areas that you think are going to be stronger and more effective for marketeers going forward?
Oh, great questions. I mean, I love the mix of creativity, analytics, and strategy. You know, and with marketing, there's always more than one right answer. I don't think there's any area of business that is quite so broad, quite so varied. I like the storytelling aspect of it, you know, seeing stories convert to awareness and then ultimately sales. Since I've taken on my role as head of marketing and external comms, I have not had a boring day at my desk. In terms of the second part of your question, you know, where are the opportunities? There's, you know, performance marketing is an area where even in the pandemic, I think salaries have increased, and there's lots of demand for people who can manage, you know, programmatic paid search. But no, the fascinating thing is it's the variety of roles that you get. You know, in a marketing team, you might have those paid search specialists. You're going to have social media specialists. You're going to have people working on email. Under my remit, I also have PR, and there's, you know, and all of those roles are just really different.
Yes, so lots of different kind of opportunities within that, I guess, and you've seen a natural progression through your career into this job. But for people who might not be doing, say, marketing as a focus in their degree, be it tourism or a marketing degree with tourism added on, what kind of advice would you give someone who's sitting here today thinking, actually, that sounds like something that I'm really keen on, I really like the digital side, I'm doing a lot on social media, you know, what sort of skills do you think they should be getting more formal qualifications or just getting experience in that could help them pursue a career in the marketing space?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a marketing resume and you want to move across, you need to be able to demonstrate that it's something that you have genuine interest in, and that you're working. I think you need to be able to show a potential employer that you've been taking steps to move across. You know, one of the things that I did very early on was with the Chartered Institute of Marketing, did a digital diploma, and it was just having that piece of paper as well that kind of showed a commitment to it, and it was something I self-funded again, showing a commitment. So, you know, signals of commitment, and you know, if you're lacking in experience, then good doses of enthusiasm.
Great, actually, I was going to ask a bit about experience, because I think many people who are taking tourism, hospitality degrees, or just pure business and marketing degrees, but a lot of those have marketing modules within them, and it may be an area that they find particularly interesting. So going back to what you're saying about, you know, maybe they, at the moment, currently, they may have lack of practical experience in a business sense around marketing and all the different forms of it. What sort of things do you think they could look at doing, bearing in mind it's very tough at the moment to get any real-time work experience? Have you got any advice for people actually looking at that and thinking over the next few months where they might be able to demonstrate enthusiasm and experience to potential employers?
If you're looking at, you want experience, but you can't get experience from an employer, then, you know, look at where you can gain that experience. So there might be voluntary associations or local communities or somewhere else where people just want a helping hand. You can contribute something meaningful, and at the same time, you get to build up, you know, experience which you suddenly can use to sell yourself in for an actual, you know, paid role.
Yeah. And I think also, as you know, one of our big messages at Future You is always around personal branding. And actually the marketing yourself is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it would probably be worrying if a marketer wasn't able to sell themselves. So, and be careful of the the online brand presence you are building for yourself as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going looking for jobs, I mean, obviously you've had a number of different jobs within the sector and affiliated with it. And I know also one of those jobs, which you didn't mention, was you did work for a recruitment company for a while. So you're pretty good when it comes to what CVs should look like and demonstrable skills and things. So in terms of, the where we're at the moment in the world, how do you think, as we come out of the pandemic, the hiring process itself will have changed? And what tips and hints and bits of advice can you give people who are sitting here thinking, how do I sell myself in a post-COVID world into my job, my perfect job?
Yeah. One of the key things that has changed in the world, and actually, we're going to be, I imagine we're going to be working from home for quite a while yet, certainly here in the UK. So interviews are now being done online via webcam, like the conversation you and I are having now. So that does change the hiring process. You need to think very carefully about how you're coming across on webcam from an interview perspective. Secondly, where I think things have become much harder for candidates is if you're only interviewed online, you don't get to walk into a company's offices. And therefore, it's much, much tougher for job seekers to determine whether the firm's cultural fit is actually for them. When you go for an interview, you used to get to walk around the place. You used to go and look at the staff canteen, So the advice I would give people is, candidates, you need to become better detectives. Use social media, use networking. Think about the questions you're going to ask that company to try and get out of them a true sense of the company's culture, because you've got to make sure that when you make a move or when you get a job, it's the right move or job for you. And I think there's an element of resisting the temptation just to jump into something because you think the world's a tough place. So, it's waiting for the right opportunity, but it's how do you know it's the right opportunity when you're not getting to, touch stuff and see stuff firsthand?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right, that the detective side, I like that, the researching, is even more critically important. And obviously there are websites like Glassdoor out there that have employee reviews on there. And I think we shouldn't forget LinkedIn either. I think, the LinkedIn is a great opportunity to network and have a look at what the companies are saying, not just on their websites, but how they're selling themselves and the people are talking on LinkedIn and these various professional platforms. And actually that kind of segues nicely into the networking side of the business. LinkedIn obviously is a huge platform to help with that. But, again, as you rightly say, we're all fairly confined at the moment. And for a sector and I include your role within that, networking is a critical part on the face-to-face side of it. So, how important do you think it will remain in the future and helping people with their progression, and how should they be going about it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a member of the ITT for a reason, and two of the jobs I've done have come about as a result of networking. So I'd say networking is really important. I guess an important question is, what type of relationships help us to get jobs? And that's obviously the fundamental of, element of networking. And when I started my career, I would have said that networking was about weak ties. That is the people but not terribly well, a friend of a friend. And the reason that weak ties were important, it's a pretty simple reason, is it made it easier to hear about the jobs and opportunities that were actually available. in my opinion, though, weak ties are no longer the key. And the reason for that, and you mentioned LinkedIn, today's media landscape means it's really easy to find out about what jobs there are actually available. So from a networking perspective, I would say the thing that's going to get you the job today isn't going to be the person who tells you that a job exists, but the much smaller group of people who can talk knowledgeably and convincingly about you as an applicant. Someone who can promote you as a worker and as a colleague. It's so easy to hear about jobs today. The hard part is to stand out, and that's where your network comes in.
Absolutely. And you obviously, I mean, you are a consummate networker, Matthew, as am I, and you do a great job as the head of the London chapter of Travel Massive, which I think maybe some of the people watching this maybe not aware of, but certainly a lot of people globally are. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about Travel Massive and the sorts of things that you get up to.
Yeah, no, thanks, Claire. That would be great. I mean, Travel Massive has become this go-to global network for travel industry insiders, leaders, innovators, and we've seen huge growth in the London community. We've now got over 4,000 members, and globally, the Travel Massive community has over 60,000 members. And I love the global element of it. Every time I fly somewhere, there's always someone from a local chapter, that I can meet up with, and I've built some strong relationships with chapter leaders, in other countries. Travel Massive, we believe in supporting diversity, promoting innovation, encouraging collaboration. We believe in facilitating the sharing of ideas and inspiration through our events, because like the ITT Future You program, it strengthens the ecosystem of the industry. Recently, I hosted an in conversation event with three founders. We had the founders of Go8, Trip Abroad, and Altovita. So that was an event I very much enjoyed hosting. All of our events at the moment are virtual. No surprise there. We've also done a startup pitch night. And then, of course, we also collaborated with the ITT, which I really enjoyed when we ran our international careers conference last summer.
Amazing.
8 hours of streaming. So that was a fun but intense day. I'd encourage anyone listening actually to go and check Travel Massive out. So that's travelmassive.com. Chapters all over the world, and it's a great networking platform.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fairly active member, as you know, and I've been privileged to be invited to speak at some of your events. But obviously, we did have a great time with our international careers conference last year. And I think, as you say, the two associations align. I mean, you talked about diversity and innovation and opportunity, and that's very much the focus of both of us. So, long may our alliance continue, both in the London chapter, but also at the global level as well. So we're absolutely delighted with that. So as we think about sort of starting to wrap up, Matthew, I guess it's a question I often ask people, but, a lot of us have been around for a long time, but if we could take ourselves back to our younger years when we were just starting out in our careers, what is the best piece of advice you think you could give yourself?
Oh, so you're including me in the pile of people who've been around a long time?
Not as long as me, I promise. You've had a long career in such a short time, I should say. Maybe is that best?
So one bit of advice that I would give, be curious, keep on learning. Learning doesn't stop the moment that you finish university. Learning comes in many shapes and forms. I've certainly continued my formal education post university. I did a performance diploma on the piano with the London College of Music. I don't know how helpful that is in terms of a travel career, but no, I've also recently studied disruptive strategy at Harvard, which was a phenomenal program. So just remain curious and keep on learning, and be prepared to pivot. If we know one thing from last year, you never know what's coming next. So make sure that you're adaptable as a person, and that you've got a skill set that is adaptable, which feeds into the idea of, be open to ideas as well.
That's great. Really good advice, Matthew. Thank you for that. I would say, actually, your piano skills will come in great demand, I have no doubt, at future travel industry get-togethers. If I'm any judge of that, we always like a bit of a sing-song as well. So, Matthew, thank you so much for your time today. As always, it's a real pleasure to hear from you and hear your sage words of advice, which I know our audience will have found really useful. So thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you, Claire. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. As always, it was great fun.